When you think about how countries are formed, you probably picture revolutions, right? Or maybe a long, hard fought battle for freedom. But what if a nation was, well, created by accident? What if its Independence Day wasn't a huge party, but a moment of absolute crisis? Well, that's the wild and totally unexpected story of how Singapore came to be.
Yeah, that's really the core question here. How is a country born not from victory, but from rejection? Singapore's story doesn't start with a proud declaration of, we want freedom. Nope, it starts with an expulsion. Just imagine it, a tiny island suddenly cut loose, completely on its own, and forced to figure out how to survive against, well, all the odds.
Okay, so to really get why 1965 was such a shock, we gotta rewind a bit. We have to go back to the very beginning. For more than 100 years, Singapore wasn't even thought of as its own country. It was more like a prized possession, a really, really important piece on the British Empire's global chessboard. So, right from its founding back in 1819, Singapore's path seemed pretty set. It was set up as a free port, and it was in the perfect spot, smack dab on the main trade route between India and China. And wow, did it grow fast. It quickly became a crown colony, and by 1939, it was home to this massive naval base. The whole point was to project British power and keep control over Asia. But that feeling of security, of untouchable imperial power, yeah, that was about to be completely shattered. The big turning point, not just for Singapore, but for the whole region, came with World War II. Winston Churchill himself had a nickname for it, the Gibraltar of the East. Think about that. It was seen as this impregnable fortress, a powerful symbol of British might. The thinking was pretty simple. Nobody could ever successfully invade it. It was just impossible. And then the impossible happened. In a lightning-fast, absolutely stunning campaign, the Japanese army just swept down the Malay Peninsula and took the island. The fall of Singapore. It was the single largest surrender of British-led forces in all of history. Just unbelievable. And you see, this wasn't just about buildings getting destroyed. The real damage? It was to Britain's credibility. The myth of British invincibility was completely broken. For the people living there, this whole idea of European superiority shattered. A totally new kind of political awareness started to bubble up, and one word started to echo everywhere: Merdeka. It means independence. But here's where the story takes a really interesting, kind of strange turn. The path to independence wasn't what you'd expect. The leaders of this new anti-colonial movement, they didn't actually picture Singapore standing on its own. Nope, they saw its future as being tied up with its much larger neighbor, Malaya. Which is a fascinating question, right? I mean, you've just been pushing for self-rule, so why would you immediately want to merge with another country and give some of that power away? Well, the answer comes down to a mix of cold, hard economics and some very practical politics. So the thinking behind this merger was super practical. I mean, look at the situation. Singapore had basically no natural resources. Unemployment was rampant. So merging with Malaya would create this common market, which would be great for new industries and jobs. It would also strengthen their deep historical ties. And, a big one, it was seen as a way to keep Singapore from becoming a communist stronghold. For leaders like Lee Kuan Yew, this really seemed like the only logical way forward. And so, on September 16th, 1963, it happened. After a vote showed huge support from the people, Singapore officially joined the brand new Federation of Malaysia. This was supposed to be it, the happy ending, the goal they'd been working toward. But it lasted less than 2 years. Yeah, that dream of a shared future, it turned into a political nightmare, and fast. The whole merger, which looks so good on paper, just started to fall apart. Why? Because of deep, fundamental differences that simply could not be resolved. And this slide just lays out the core problem perfectly. This wasn't just a political squabble. This was a clash of two totally different ideas about what a country should even be. On one side, you had Singapore's ruling party, the PAP. They were pushing for a Malaysian Malaysia, a secular nation where everybody, no matter their race, is treated equally. But on the other side, you had Malaysia's ruling party, UMNO. Their vision was a federation that gave special privileges to the Malay majority, which was written right into their constitution. These two visions were on a collision course. They just couldn't exist in the same country. And pretty soon, all that heated political talk boiled over and spilled onto the streets. In 1964, horrible race riots erupted. Dozens of people were killed, hundreds were injured. The whole union was becoming toxic, just poisonous. And for the leaders up in Kuala Lumpur, they felt there was only one way to stop things from getting even worse.
Just listen to this quote from Lee Kuan Yew. You can practically hear his voice breaking as he announced the separation on TV. For me, it is a moment of anguish. This wasn't a victory speech. This was a gut-wrenching admission of failure. His entire life's work, everything he believed in, had just ended in divorce. And that very personal pain was about to be made official in the cold, hard language of the law.
Okay, so let's actually look at the document itself. This is the Proclamation of Singapore, and look at the language right from the get-go. It talks about an agreement that was made just a couple days before, on August 7th, an agreement that Singapore should cease to be a state of Malaysia. So right away, you can see this wasn't Singapore just declaring independence. It was a separation that was negotiated, even though it was all done in secret.
And here's the key part. The document points directly to the proclamation made by Malaysia's Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman. The wording is crystal clear. There's no ambiguity. Singapore shall cease to be a state of Malaysia. It's right there in black and white. This was an expulsion, plain and simple, and now it was being made law.
So it's only after being kicked out that Lee Kuan Yew makes his own declaration. He proclaims the island a forever sovereign, democratic, and independent nation. And right there, on August 9th, 1965, the accidental nation was officially, suddenly born. So there you have it. August 9th, 1965. Singapore is independent. But it was an independence that pretty much nobody actually wanted, and it was one they seemed completely and totally unprepared for. I mean, just look at the list of challenges they were facing. It was staggering. You had unemployment in the double digits, you had zero natural resources, not even enough water to drink, you had a massive housing shortage, with people living in squatter settlements. On top of all that, you have the very real threat of military action from your much bigger neighbors. Honestly, most of the world looked at this tiny new accidental country and just assumed it was going to fail. And yet, from that moment of total crisis, something absolutely incredible happened. That tiny, vulnerable island, a nation literally born from rejection, it completely transformed itself. Fast forward to today, and Singapore has one of the highest GDPs per capita in the entire world. It's ranked 7th globally. And that just leaves us with this one final, powerful thought. Singapore's story proves that how a nation begins doesn't have to be how it ends. It really makes you wonder, right? How does a country, forged in a moment of crisis, turn what looked like a total failure into one of the world's greatest success stories? Now that is a question worth thinking about.